Warm greetings to you all. Today in this session, we are going to look at researching the events. Events as a concept developed by this social sciences research from the long back. So how this in the context of digital ethnography, how this concept events is researched. That's what this session is about. The whole content is taken from the book uh, Digital Ethnography, Principles and Practice, written by Professor Shara Pink and her co-authors. So, yeah, this is the foundational book. So, the entire book, this session is the final chapter from the book. So, this will give us a comprehensive this thing about the understanding of how to undertake research, digital research on events. So in the context of digital ethnography, what events really mean, kind of thing. So yeah, digital ethnographers, the research events, and first we discuss the concept the event by outlining how the notion of the ritual event was appropriated by anthropology, by media studies to create the concept of the quote, media event, unquote. This connection has created a long-lasting relationship between ethnographic and media studies approaches. However, for a contemporary context, we rethink the event as taking place in the relationship between the offline, online, and digital material. We outline how we might therefore understand the event as a contemporary analytical category. Then we discuss 3 examples of how contemporary events have been researched by digital ethnographers. We describe the methods that have been used for this and the types of knowledge that they have produced by focusing on free culture events in Barcelona, Spain, digital arts events in Asia, and watching national cooking shows in Australia. The event as a concept. The concept of event has historically been a key category in social science research. Its use has in the past included a famous on ritual events, Turner 1969, spectacles, Beeman 1993, and traditional public performances, Marvin 1988 and Pink 1997. So in this session, we are concerned with how to research contemporary events, which are constituted and experienced through online, offline, or digital material entanglements. The notion of event often implies something that happens in a public context, and indeed here too, through our interest in the media event. We are concerned with the events that have a public dimension or that involve groups of people who are thought of as publics, quote unquote, such as television audiences, people who participate in a public art or who are involved in activism. However, when it comes to researching events ethnographically, we need to go beyond the notion of the event as a public entity to consider ways in which it is mediated and how it is engaged within domestic and other non-public environments and contexts. Indeed, the concept event has varied definitions across the social sciences and the humanities. Therefore, in order to use the term at all, we need to be clear about the definition that we are using. The idea of the ritual event depended on an understanding of ritual as a structured and symbolically meaningful series of repeated activities. Often in the last century, ritual events were interpreted anthropologically as creating forms of societal transformation and or affirmation. For the early example, consider the work of Victor Turner's example 1969. We return to this background in the section of discussing the development of the concept of the media event and subsequent commentaries on this in relation to digital media. However, the concept of the event has more recently been analytically to provide more processual and experiential accounts of the world, which, as we point out later in this session, offers us new ways in which to understand how digital media are part of and experience within events. The anthropologist Michael Jackson has used the concept of the event to account for how happenings are experienced and remembered, and how they are used to imply possible futures. Jackson's point that multiple points of view about what has happened emerge after the event. Jackson, 2005. Indeed, resonates with the idea that ritual symbols are polysemic. That is, they had multiple meanings. Example, Turner, 1969. However, it in fact takes us in a different analytical direction. Jackson's focus is not on events that are ritually repeated, but instead on an extensively documented example of an event involving election violence in Kampala, Uganda, reported in the Sierra Leone Web in 2003. He then undertakes an ethnographic archaeology of the event through considering the ways in which participants in his research described this event. Jackson argues that the event quickly and imperceptibly blur into and becomes stories. Jackson argues that, quote, events quickly and imperceptibly blur into and become stories, unquote. Jackson, 2005. And that in doing so, they become what he calls, quote, a window, as it were, onto previous events that are all but forgotten and possible events that are already being anticipated or prepared, unquote. He thus suggests for the emergent event a temporality where processes are not seen as cyclical, but where, quote, even event opens up an ethical space in which new directions become possible, unquote. This approach therefore enables us to see an empirically identifiable event, such as an instance of election violence in the case of Jackson's work, or as we outlined below, an important or activist event as a research window through which we might begin to investigate processes of societal transformation. Taking the notion of the event to a further level of abstraction can also enable us to use a similar approach to account for what we might think of as the unspectacular type of event. For instance, as we outline in one of our examples discussed towards the end of this session, TV viewing events, the human geographer and Doreen Massey has suggested a processual definition of the event when writing about the event of place as a constellation of processes. I repeat, the human geographer Doreen Massey has suggested a processual definition of the event when writing about the, quote, event of place, unquote, as a, quote, constellation of processes, unquote, 2005. that changes over time. If we, following Massey, think of the event as a happening in which a series of things and processes of possible different qualities and affordances come together and might subsequently then disperse, it is possible to understand both the mundane and spectacular happenings as forms of event. Therefore, the concept of event has long since been attractive to social scientists as a way in which to understand identifiable occurrences, whether or not these are previously planned. As we show in the coming section, the concept has been of equal appeal to media scholars. The development of concept of the media event, the development of the concept of the media event, the relationship between public event, media, and the context for its dissemination and consumption, which are often private or domestic, has been a focus for disciplines that use ethnographic methods since the 1990s. Media scholars Daniel Dayan and Elihu Katz, 1992, landmark discussion of the media event brought together anthropological theories of ritual to understand the ways in which the media participate in the world. As a critical response to the media affects approach that dominated at the time, it offered new ways to think about how media are part of public culture and everyday life, and how the two are related. As Eric Rothenbuehler explains, according to a media events approach, quote, in ritual, individuals participate in symbolic action according to scripts encoded elsewhere and elsewhere, and with purposes, meanings, and implication already mostly set by convention, unquote. 2010. He writes that, quote, when the media events are successful, it is their capacity as ritual that produces the results of enthralling audiences, changing minds, and changing history, unquote. 2010, page number 64. Academic discussions of television broadcasting formed the context where the notion of the media event was developed. For scholars of media events, the television audience were, quote, willing, unquote, participants in the ritual. 2010. The concept of the media event was highly influential in bringing media studies and ethnography together in an interdisciplinary approach to understanding the relationship between broadcasting at a public level and individual and collective everyday engagements with media content. 20 years later, Dayan comments that when he and Katz wrote about media events in 1992, they were concerned with, quote, great occasions, mostly occasions of state that are televised as they take place and transfix a nation or the world, unquote. Dayan and Katz, 1992. They divided this into three categories, quote, contests, conquests, and coronations. So these two authors together published a book. In that book, they have divided these media events into three categories. Context category, and the conquest category, and the coronations category. This could mean studying media events like the Olympics and royal weddings, the televised Spanish bullfight, Pink 1997, or ritual Iban performances in Malaysian Borneo, Postill 2007, the TV reality show Big Brother, Cowley, 2002. In 9/11 in America, Rothenbuchler, 2005. People Power 2 in the Philippines, Rafael, 2003, and natural disasters such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and floods, Murthy and Longwell, 2013. Such media events were, Diane writes, quote, events we argued that in the effect placed a halo over the television set, thus transforming the viewing experience, unquote. Yet he acknowledges, quote, the world has changed, unquote, Diane, 2010. And it is with respect to this changed world that we outline a methodology for researching digital media events. However, as we have noted above, new ways of thinking about the event theoretically have also emerged. And in the next session, we also argue for the others argue for a shift away from the notion of event as a ritual and towards the more existential Jackson and processual Massey conceptualizations of event that we have described in the previous section. So the authors of this digital ethnography, principles and practice, they quote Jackson. He came up with the event as an existential event, and Massey, the concept of processual. He sees event as a processual. So these conceptualizations of the event were already described. So the implications of the digital for the concept of the media event. In the context of digital media, events have come to be experienced and produced in new ways. Diane suggests that this has led to further segmentation of television and to closer interrelation between news and media events, whereby, quote, any event can be turned into a media event through an addition of specific features, unquote, Diane, 2010. He also identifies a power shift, noting that, quote, instead of a dominant media organizing and conferring a hierarchy on the multiplicity of events, dominant events now serve as the contested ground for the multiplicity of media voices, unquote, Diane, 2010. Page number 29. Building on this updating of the original concept, Rothenbuchler focuses away from the dramatic events of media. Rothenbuchler focuses away from the dramatic elements of media events to remind us of the possibility of the everydayness of media events, noting how rituals are self-preserving and self-replicating, unquote. So he emphasizes an understanding of communication as ritual that employs established forms, applying this understanding to the analysis of radio in a way that takes the notion of media events beyond the, quote, special, unquote, event to suggest that they, quote, might not be so radically unique after all, unquote, since even some, quote, special as they are still part of the continuity of communicative words. I repeat, since even, quote, special as they are still part of the continuity of communicative worlds, unquote, Rothenbuchler, 2010. Hepp and Cowley outline a renewed definition of media events for a global age, which borrows Diane's series of core elements of the original definition of media events.
Oh, Gadde,
emphasis and performativity, emphasis, quote unquote, and performativity, quote unquote, and loyalty, quote unquote, and shared experience. Um, uh, so they develop an understanding of media cultures as resulting from specific thickenings, specific quote thickenings, unquote, of meaning that have links of varying strength with the specific territories. Hepp and Cowley 2010. They argue that, quote, media events are closely related to the processes of constructing the, quote, mediated center, unquote. As a consequence, they are in general power related and so must be analyzed critically. That is, in terms of how they are constructed as a centering, unquote. Hepp and Cowley 2010. These media theorists have engaged understandings of digital media's potential to change how people experience and participate in media events, as well as the potential role of events in the constitution of societal structures and processes. Taking insights from media theorists, we might conceive the media event as being somehow, quote, special, unquote, than 2010. But at the same time, part of the continuity of communication, Rothenbuchler 2010, and everyday life, Pink 2012, it might have a, quote, center, unquote, of the kind referred to by Hepp and Cowley 2010. But some digital media events, particularly digital activist happenings, can be more accurately defined as decentered. An ethnographic focus on digital media and its relationship to events has profound implications for the way in which we understand events, their making and their mediation. Historically, media events concerned incidents that were entangled in the business or public interest. Today, the shifting basis for media production, consumption, and dissemination, along with the digital convergence and the growth of mobile and locative media, have altered the ways that media events occur. Changes have occurred in how the mediated and material elements of events are constituted and experienced, how they play out spatially and temporally, and the politics through which these events and the participants in them might intervene in change-making processes in the world. Given these changes, there is a case for re-theorizing the media event in order to understand how media technologies, production, consumption, and dissemination are proliferated temporarily and spatially through the processual theory of place as event. Example, Massey, 2005. Such as a re-theorization allows us to acknowledge how events fit into processes of change, rather than simply seeing them as a process of ritual reaffirmation. Researching events through digital ethnography. Digital ethnography explores the digital material environments that we inhabit and how human activity and the environments in which it takes place are co-constitutive. The digital ethnographer observes people, things, and processes as they engage in activity traversing the online, offline. This facilitates their understanding of the digital, material, affective, and social relations of events. I repeat, digital ethnography explores the digital media material environments that we inhabit and how human activity and the environments in which it takes place are co-constitutive. The digital ethnographer observes people, things, and processes as they engage in activity traversing the online, offline. This facilitates their understanding of the digital, material, affective, and social relations of events. In the following section, we give examples. In the following section, the authors give examples of 3 projects in which media events were researched and defined ethnographically. The first example is a television event in India which connects both the materiality of the television viewing context with online materials. The second concerns how a transient digital arts practice event in Japan was both inspired by participant practices and experiences and inscribed digitally online by a participant. And the third is an example of the digital activism, which not only brings together different face-to-face and digital elements, but also constitutes a new ways of thinking about the temporality of events. Spirited events, audience ethnographies of everyday household rituals and religious TV in India. This is the first example. So, as the authors have noted, media events have conventionally been understood as important public sites of shared ritual and spectacle, such as screening of the Olympic Games on broadcast television. This conception of media event tends to assume an imagined, often national audience of passive viewers consuming the event in a question form, the safety of their long rooms. The example we offer here of mass televised yoga events and related personal and domestic rituals in India complicates this conception of the media event in a number of ways. In family homes in India, the 2 key material objects that dominate the long room are televisions and small domestic shrines, with the shrine and the television occasionally combined together in the TV cabinet, as this juxtaposition suggests both religion and television are central to everyday life in India. Delhi, India's capital, is regularly brought to the standstill by religious festivals, while famous Bollywood and television actors such as Amitabh Bachchan, the host of India's version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, have shrines constructed in their honor. With the huge growth of television in India and the rise of electronic media more broadly, time-poor Indians are increasingly practicing religious rites within the comfort and convenience of their homes rather than visiting temples or public shrines. Spiritual shows on morning TV featuring various religious gurus they enable households to start their day with a religious discourse and prayer ritual or puja, while temples now offer people quote, just in time, unquote, live broadcasts of religious ceremonies and pujas via their mobile phones. Lewis et al. So the forthcoming. So we are interested in what such mediated everyday rituals might suggest for notions of the event. We examine the case of yoga and television, in particular the mass television yoga camps run by the well-known spiritual guru and yoga practitioner Baba Ramdev. Baba Ramdev's mass television yoga camps can be read as a kind of event television for participants and viewers alike. The event here, however, is at once public and privatized through personalized just-in-time yoga practices, contained and dispersed via digital TV and YouTube. and linked the embodied practices as much as shared forms of symbolism and meaning. Ethnographic methods offer a way in which to understand how such events are experienced at an ordinary, everyday level by audiences. In focusing on TV yoga in India, we question how the domestication of such events blurs the boundaries between public and private religious rites and practices. It also complicates the notion of a mediated event, first as something that occurs in public, and second as a mediated moment bounded by time and space and shared simultaneously by audiences. As part of the large study of lifestyle television and the shifts in lifestyle, identity and consumption in Southeast Asia, Tania Lewis and Kiran Malehali conducted ethnographic research in 2011 with the 12 households in Mumbai, ranging from poorer households to upper and lower middle class families. Lewis, Martin and Son, and at the time this book was also forthcoming. The study examined the ways in which people who are using lifestyle advice gleaned from television, a huge and growing industry in India. For instance, they were interested in the role played by television lifestyle gurus such as Baba Ramdev in advising people how to manage rapidly transforming and often increasingly stressful lives. Negotiating the relentless traffic of Mumbai, it often took considerable lengths of time to travel fairly short distances within the city. The researchers visited households in a range of places, from more middle-class suburbs to poorer slum neighborhoods on the outskirts of the city. After recruiting households through attendance at a community cultural night, Lewis and Mulhanalli spent significant amounts of time with the families, ranging from large extended families to smaller nuclear households in their homes, watching TV with them, often sharing a meal, discussing their media use, talking about their daily patterns of living and consumption. They were interested in seeing how television viewing fitted in with, reflected, and was imbricated in their broader lifestyles and material practices. The growing speed and complexity of daily life was a recurrent theme in people's lives. Both Sushila, a middle-class professional woman, and her family, for instance, spoke of the speed and stressful nature of modern life and of the changing nature of family life with the less stay-at-home housewives. They talked of having no time for holidays and barely enough time to watch TV. The son, a law student and avid TV watcher, described having to catch up on programming repeats on the weekend or via the internet. For example, of the website for a catch-up program. Yeah, so when they did watch television, this often occurred fairly late at night, given the long working days and traveling times in Mumbai, with the peak hours viewing often around 9:30 or 10 p.m. The television was also often in the background. For example, when Sushila was cooking, she might have a cookery show in the background or having a morning spiritual show on the background while getting organized to go to the work. Despite being increasingly time poor, many households watch religious television on a regular basis, including spiritual lifestyle advice shows featuring gurus offering instruction on how live often with an emphasis on health and well-being as much as on spiritualism. Baba Ramdev, for example, was regularly cited by households as a major spiritual and well-being guru, and families spoke of such figures as providing helpful and ethical life guidance. You learn to be happy with what you have. While many people saw religious TV in more general terms as offering a calming respite from the stresses of daily living. Here, the television seems to have taken on the role of the kind of electronic shrine, Lewis et al., rather than rather than, or at least alongside the family shrine. The TV was often a central focus of uh, code, rituals, unquote, in the form of structured repeated activities, both the secular and religious, of daily living, from listening to morning sermons at the start of the day or watching afternoon religious shows to cooking recipes demonstrated on a daytime show, uh, to gathering in the evening to eat dinner and watch the news as a family. Another key embodied ritual involved in practicing yoga. A number of households noted that while many Indians cannot afford to attend Baba Ramdev's yoga camps or go to yoga classes, yoga gurus on television and the internet have provided the opportunity for the broader population to learn and practice yoga techniques in their homes. Yeah, see, for example, Baba Ramdev's own YouTube channel, www.youtube.com user as Baba Ramdev. So that is to in a sense participate in often communal practices, but in a privatized, just-in-time manner. As noted, while it is difficult to speak of events television in the context of India, where there is not one TV market or public, but rather a multiplicity of markets and audiences, Baba Ramdev's televised mass yoga camps, in which thousands of Indians gather for yoga instruction, offer a kind of mediated event, one that sees the embodied practices of the camp attendees replicated in the privatized practices of household viewers, led by a mic'd up Baba Ramdev on a large stage. The yoga events involve chanting and sermons, followed by extended demonstrations of various asanas, yoga postures, with the audience practicing each asana en masse. Viewers at home can also partake in the spectacle as observers, as Ramdev devotees and as yoga practitioners. Their movements at home mirroring the synchronized asanas of the camp attendees. Postill is a 56 years old government employee who lived very modestly with his wife on the outskirts of Mumbai and was an avid watcher of religious TV, spoke extensively about the health benefits of the yoga he learned from watching and simultaneously practicing the asanas demonstrated by gurus like Baba Ramdev. In 2004, the author had 3 artery blockages, so 72, 67, and 52. Not the author, the respondent, sorry. In 2004, the respondent had 3 artery blockages, 72, 67, 52%, and he heard that yoga would be helpful. When he was diagnosed, the doctor at the hospital suggested either angioplasty or bypass surgery. He consulted another doctor and he suggested yoga. And then he saw yoga on TV and he thought, instead of spending money, why not try yoga? He practiced it for 3 to 4 months, and he started feeling better, but could not get in to get a medical checkup. However, after 6 months, he got examined. The blockage was under 40%. India is a linguistically and culturally diverse country with a few moments of shared televisual spectacle, cricket and reality shows like Indian Idol being perhaps an odd exception, though the shared audience here would still be far from national in scope and scale. Religious rituals and practices on television, however, offer the potential for shared embodied forms of what Joseph Alter calls, quote, somatic nationalism, unquote, 2000. They do so in a way that challenge conventional understandings of the media event as a form of public spectacle. As this ethnography of household televisual practices suggests in India, the quote, eventness unquote of television can be seen to be as much about the habitual embodied practices and rituals of ordinary people as it is about TV spectacles, Cowley 2002. In a post-broadcast digital era, television is increasingly shaped by the ordinary and articulates with people's domestic practices, from cooking and home renovation shows to health and yoga programming, where the rituals and events on television were on Master Chef India, which also has an online presence. Or or on Baba Ramdev's yoga camps are co-extensive with the private rituals conducted in household settings. Bonner 2003 and Levis 2008. Another key insight offered by this ethnographic research is its focus on and recognition of the culturally embedded nature and understanding of media events. These are emphasized by our findings regarding the centrality of religion and forms of enhancement in Indian media modernity. This ethnographic audience research in India opens up new ways of thinking about rituals and events in a complex post-broadcast media environment where personal spiritualism, embodiment, and digital media are seamlessly interconnected. And another example, ethnography and art. Researching Keitei Meizu, a site-specific mobile game event. Larissa Hjorth's research has combined as digital ethnography. I repeat, Larissa Hjorth's research has combined digital ethnography and arts practice to explore the relationship between climate issues and screen media in Asia. The arts practice project, which involved the development of site-specific mobile game, Keitai Meizu, that is discussed in this example, was inspired by the experience of a gamer and research participant named Toshi, a 25-year-old man who lived in Tokyo at the time of Hjorth's research. Toshi was playing a handheld game during the 2011 Tokyo earthquake and the tsunami that is now known as 311. Toshi's immersion in the PlayStation Portable (PSP) game was so deep that he mistook the quake vibrations for the monster's movements in his game. In the moments after the quake, he realized the horror of the real-life event, and he desperately tried to contact friends and family. Tragically, his efforts to communicate with his loved ones were to no avail. As Toshi describes, when the earthquake occurred, I was alone in my room playing a Monster Hunter PSP game, exactly at the time I was fighting with the monster who makes an earthquake, so that I did not realize that an actual offline quake had occurred. Only after beating down the monster, I realized something different around me. A fish tank had overflowed, and books and had fallen down. Initially, I was not really shocked by the earthquake itself, but felt frustration with the aftermath, the power failure, panic buying, nuclear accident, and such stuff. During this time, I stayed inside with a friend and continued to play the Monster Hunter game, but the game was no longer entertaining. In the days after 3/11, and as multiple and conflicting news reports emerged across mass and social media, Toshi and a friend used the game to hide from the pain and confusion. Later, it emerged that the national broadcaster NHK had deliberately withheld important information about the Fukushima reactor under the instructions of the government. Toshi, like millions of other Japanese, shifted their trust away from broadcast media towards mobile media like Twitter, location-based services such as Foursquare and Instagram. These helped them gain a sense of, quote, intimate publics, unquote, a form of closeness in a public mediated context, while at the same time, as the example above shows, Toshi sought out a sense of perpetual co-presence with the family and friends. Toshi's gameplay is about intentional escapism, particularly when the world is traumatic and confusing. This shift to mobile and social media during 3/11 inspired Hjorth and her colleagues to develop the site-specific mobile game Katie Mizu discussed below, specifically to address the question of how researchers, artists can harness Twitter and camera phone apps to make a game that reflected on the environment in the new ways. Hjorth's work was developed within the context of the larger Spatial Dialogues project, in which she and her colleagues collaborated with the Japanese Boat People Association in 2013 to develop different artistic ways to map Tokyo sites in terms of the hidden streams. Through a series of video, sound, game, and sculptural narratives, their project Shibuya, Underground Streams, sought to make the general public in Tokyo consider the underground streams making up much of Tokyo. In particular, the project focused on one of the busiest places in the world, Shibuya. By putting a shipping container in a park over the month of June 2013, the project explored the idea of cartographies. I repeat, by putting a shipping container in a park over the month of June, the project explored the idea of cartographies: water, emotional, social, playful, psychological, historical, and geographic. Given that Tokyo is made up of numerous little rivers underneath all the trains and roads, the researchers, artists wanted to make audiences aware that they are literally perpetually walking on water. In this project, Japanese and Australian artists were asked to make a series of abstract and representational works of water creatures, which were then placed around the park. The project sought to disrupt dichotomies between art and non-art, water and non-water, game and non-game, player and ethnographer. Players had 15 minutes to hunt for, photograph, and share online uh, various native only water related creatures and objects that have been placed around the site. They then quote, capture, unquote, the art with their camera phones and shared it online on Twitter or Instagram. Winners only sent pictures of the native species to the Katie Mizu Twitter account. The game deployed both old geocaching and new Twitter and Instagram media to turn players into ethnographers. The game space was blurred across online and offline with Instagram and Twitter, enabling co-present friends to share the experiences and images. Through the process of gameplay, participants became more mindful of the local water species, as well as being reflective about how the city is made up of numerous little rivers underneath all the trains and roads. In Keitei Mizu, the researchers artists explored the hypervisual omnipresence of camera, phone, apps to show the multiple ways in which place can be represented, shared, and experienced. Far from an eroding relationship between absence and presence, Katie Mizu sought to highlight the importance of the ambient co-presence in the construction and experience of place. Katie Mizu also attempted to challenge the boundaries between official and unofficial game spaces by blurring them with different modes of play. In particular, camera phone practices are involved in the creation of new haptic visualities that bring emotional and social dimensions of place and play to the official gameplay space and drive the motivation for use. By developing camera phone practices as part of the mobile game, players can develop melodramatic elements, the affective and emotional dimensions to engage friends into the play of being mobile. Part of the enjoyment of the project was not only the entanglements between the methods and its transmissions, but also how the project lived on the different ways that saw the participants taking the key role. For example, when one student group came through to play, one of the other students took it on herself to document their experiences and their responses and turn it into a short film, which she then uploaded onto Vimeo. This video was one of the few artifacts of transmission left after the ephemeral work had ceased. Moreover, traces of the play could be found in the participants' Twitter accounts, creating the new nodes for co-present entanglement. The possibility of creating a shared game event challenges the label of casual, quote unquote, often used to describe such game events, and highlights the point that such a form of participation represents an experience that is more flexible with the player's time, more easily incorporated into the player's everyday life. Keogh, 2014. Through the playful use of the Instagram geotagging, whereby numerous images of artifacts were assembled upon the website, players were able to see other players' guesses what they thought were the native animals and their location through geotagging. This created a sense of emplacement, but also displacement as other players searched for some art objects that were either mistaken for rubbish in the park or too small to see for some artwork such as Suko Toyoshima were semi-transparent creatures measuring only 5 centimeters long. The Spatial Dialogues website became a series of emplaced visualities of the park through each of the players' interpretations. The mapping of the park and the underground streams became a series of Instagram clues. So, free culture events, researching digital culture. In 2010 to 2011, in a Web 2.0 context, John Postill and Sarah Pink began a 12-month project on social media and activism in Barcelona. This is the third example. The research spanned both offline and online contexts, including face-to-face interviews, attending events, and reviewing the online, the following announcements and events on Facebook, Twitter, and other digital platforms. The use of web-based and digital social media for activism is an increasing phenomenon involving a range of web platforms. This created a constantly shifting screen-based digital landscape that is composed of a range of audio, visual, and written text. It is also, interestingly and indeed ironically, a context in which activist and establishment narratives become visually and textually interwoven. Facebook is a good example of this, where activist status posts are viewed alongside the advertisements and personalized items that inhabit the right-hand panel of the interface. Thus, we can begin to see how the digital ethnographer on entering the online world of digital activism is faced with the complex audiovisual landscape that is constituted through multiple agencies and processes. The digital ethnographer is constantly confronted with the constellation of processes, Massey 2005. Simultaneously, as ethnographers become competently mobile in these digital contexts, they develop their own online research routines and become actively involved in making the digital ethnographic places that form virtual field sites. Ping 2015, Postill and Ping 2012. Screen-based social media research is a part of the material. I repeat, screen-based social media research is part of the material, visual, sensory, social environments that researchers participate in. This point alerts us to the issue that we need to attend to the online-offline relationship on the one hand, but on the other, it also reminds us of the materiality of technologies and the need to attend to them. With an increasing range of mobile digital interfaces available, the screen that we are viewing is not necessarily a fixed computer or laptop screen, but might be a mobile phone, tablet, or other device. Mobility becomes part of the research process as the participants and the researcher might be involved in moving through various material environments while engaging with the social media. The visuality of the screen should therefore be contextualized alongside the visuality of the offline world. Given the diversification of the mobility of screen-based media, the experience and practice of the virtual ethnographer is shifting beyond the engagements with life online that tend to dominate in the existing literature. A series of examples from our fieldwork, from the author's fieldwork in Barcelona, demonstrate how the audio visuality of offline ethnography might be understood through a theory of place. The social media and activism project spanned a number of groups who were approached because they were both involved in a high-profile campaigns and because they actively used the internet and social media in their activism. The example we discuss here concerns the free culture activism. We have elected, the others have selected this example because it involves a series of audio visual processes and products that demonstrate rather well how the audio visuality of internet ethnography crosses face-to-face and online domains and involves both social media and websites. It is also a movement that, because of its close association with the digital culture and the possibilities for sharing created by the internet, requires the ethnographer to engage with its online activities. While this is not the place to go into the complexities of the history of and the debates surrounding free culture, the concept is often associated with the work of the legal scholar Lawrence Lessing and his seminal work of free culture, The Nature and Future of Creativity, published in 2004. How free culture might be achieved, however, is widely debated. During Arthur's stay in Barcelona, several events associated with free culture activism were held, including the annual Free Culture Forum, FC Forum, and the OX Cards, an arts award event. These events were simultaneously face-to-face, audiovisual, textual, and digital. They therefore provide interesting examples of how digital ethnographers might engage across different practices and contexts, and how a theory of place enables us to understand the relationality between these practices and contexts. The 2010 Free Culture Forum was a 3-day event filled with the talks, workshops, and group work that presented, debated, and examined a series of issues relating to free culture in a digital era. In the words of its website, against the powerful lobbies of the copyright industries, the FC Forum is a space for the construction of proposals arising from civil society in order to strengthen citizens' positions in the debate around the creation and distribution of art, culture, and knowledge in the digital era. The FC Forum was held alongside the OX Cars. Before and after FC Forum, the authors interviewed activists who were involved in development, attended several of its events, including the OX Cars, and carried out further participant observation in face-to-face and internet context. And in contexts where these were combined, we were able to, others were able to watch the video streamed events online, reviewing them at a later date as they remain archived at the above websites, the OX Cars 10 Law iPhone X.net as kind of thing. So conventionally, visual ethnographers might consider their own image production and the invitation to participants to produce images for the researcher as part of the research process. Yet, visual and narrative production is already integral to such high-tech events in multiple ways. For example, part of the FC Forum was led in a large hall at the University of Barcelona. As the speakers gave their presentations, they were projected directly onto the screen behind them while they spoke, either alone or in combination with visual slide presentation that they presented. Events were video streamed, yet the flow of media from the event. Yet the flow of media from the event was not only from official events sources, whose primary purpose was to project the speakers. Simultaneously, participants seated in the audience were disseminating the event online as it unfolded through microblogging. This created a further online presence during the talks as participants. Microblogging was projected onto another screen on the lecture hall. The FC Forum was concerned with the free culture as a characteristic of or possibility for a digital era. And it was created not simply as a face-to-face forum, but as an event that was simultaneously digital and across multiple platforms. As a place, the FC Forum, although its speakers had flown to it from all over the world, did not happen only in a material locality, but occurred as a place that encompassed material and electronic digital environments. As such, the notion of the visual or visual landscape of such an event, whether as to face or virtual place, becomes increasingly irrelevant. This is because it requires us to conceptualize an event that is happening partially in a material locality, but which cannot actually be seen from one single perspective because it is not bound or encircled within that locality. Rather, the event is happening in different ways in disparate localities. Following Massey 2005, in thinking of place and open and as something that cannot be encompassed by locality that is not bounded can help us to understand these kinds of events. It enables us to conceptualize both their visuality and their invisibility and to rethink the possibilities for the ethnographer who is aware of the visual as representation, the possibilities of vision in a multi-sensory context. And the importance of acknowledging and accounting for the invisible, the notion that there are always perspectives from which one cannot see everything. Events like FC Forum and the OX cars are clearly hybrid online, offline place events. Indeed, they could be seen as examples par excellence of why, as Audio 2012 notes, we often need to do visual internet research online and offline. They are part of the context where many other public events, including academic conferences, are similarly hybrid, even if on a lesser scale. Indeed, some people's everyday life activities are also characterized by this dispersal, given that we are often connected permanently to the internet through mobile and other devices. The presence of online visual materials creates a set of possibilities for analysis and experience. First, the visuality of events that span virtual and face-to-face context may be dispersed spatially across the face-to-face event itself, as at the FC Forum, and on screens in a number of locations, and temporarily as it is multiply reviewed afterwards. We are therefore confronted with the dual questions of what the visual ethnographer can see in any one moment and to where the images might be traveling. It enhances our understanding of the event that is represented, its composition and I repeat, it enhances our understanding of the event that is represented, its composition, narratives, and discourses. Yet, this is a rather conventional and limited interpretation of the event, since the place events that we have described, since the place events that the authors have described above are neither enclosed spatially nor temporally, but are open as an ongoing digital presence and as extending beyond the locality in which they were performed. Indeed, if authors consider that the audience is always the part of the performance, then they need to understand how the dispersal of the images creates the possibility for the performance to continue as it is reconstituted each time through the engagements of online viewers. In this case, such place events are not simply represented on websites, but rather they continue on the web in diverse ways. When viewing video online, it is also important to retain the same principles that we would use to understand the multisensorial nature of any ethnographic place for the analysis of online videos. This means considering the phenomenology of the viewing position, both our own and that of others' viewers. And in doing so, acknowledging that the visual materials are also part of a place that is unbounded. Elsewhere, Pink 2009 has discussed how when reviewing researcher made video clips, the researcher is reposited. Sorry, the researcher is repositioned in relation to the research subject and locality in a way that is similar to the way she or he was originally positioned. The view on the screen when reviewing the footage will be the same one that she or he saw through the viewfinder when originally shooting the footage. This, Pink suggests, offers possibilities to reimagine oneself in the place that one occupied during the research encounter and to subsequently activate a series of sensory memories of that event that are not shown in the video. At such digital events as the Free Culture Forum, the same footage that one might see projected while simultaneously streamed out of the event is then posted online, allowing the researcher to return to the footage. On one level, this can be seen as a useful way to ensure that one does not miss anything, but of course, its significance goes beyond this in that it offers the researcher a similar route through which to return to the viewing position that she or he occupied when attending the original forum. In a way, similar to the mode of returning to the research site through reviewing researcher produced video, the evocative potential of such posted video is also important to the process of generating ethnographic knowledge through audio-visual media after the face-to-face event. Reflecting on research events through digital ethnography. The three examples which the authors have offered in this chapter describe a set of different but complementary versions of how we might define and research a media event through a digital ethnography approach. They highlight the ways in which digital media have now become a central facet of the media event, whether it is through decentered activist networks that use digital media to both create and maintain a sense of community and commitment, or the development of media event by artists who integrate everyday media such as casual games into the city, effectively transforming the mundane into an event through which the city can be experienced differently. In such examples, a media event is always possible. The author's first example initially takes the concept of the media event in a more traditional media studies direction. In this sense, the example of a spirited events is more conventional in its relationship with the notion of the media event as a televised movement, which is understood as a form of ritual and connects the experience of the viewer with the feeling of nation. Yet, as the example unfolds, we see how the shifting of the field site to India, the attention to researching media events as they unfolded in people's living rooms brings a new set of insights into the nature of religious and familial practices in India, such as the shift of the television as a familial device to a shrine for the individual family members. The example of Katie Maizu created a different relationship between digital ethnography research and public art as both intervention and ethnographic site. In this example, we see how the researchers were able to produce an understanding of the relationship between online gaming, digital screen culture, and technologies, climate, and the notion of environment through their research with young gamers. Yet the project did not stop at simply gaining an understanding, but used this as a way to inform the generation of an environmentally engaged game in Tokyo, which likewise brought the digital, material, technological, and natural environments together in ways that were inspiring and sometimes ambiguous for participants. By documenting the game using digital video, the researchers were able to create a new layer of exploration and learn about how the participants in the game were able to understand the installation they had created in public space. The free culture events involved researchers attending and participating in face-to-face and online events, as well as having the possibility to analyze the online materials, including videos that create the ongoingness of these activities, as well as archiving them. These activities and resources offer researchers of media events a rich publicly available archive of materials. In combination with the people who are involved in generating, documenting, and sharing a lived reality with these events and their meanings, they create a research site which is at once online and offline, and that requires different but relational forms of engagement with the stories embodied in participants and materials. Summing up, the media event is a long-established focus of research for scholars across the social sciences and humanities. In this chapter, the authors argued that the field is of renewed interest to scholars. This is because, as examples that the others have discussed, demonstrate, there is a certain inseparability of media and events in contemporary context as they are interwoven in multiple ways. Digital media are part of how the events are conceptualized, made, and experienced by participants, viewers, and users. Yet, as we have also shown in the context of the digital material environment, yet as the authors of the book, the Digital Ethnography, Principles and Practice, have also shown in the context of the digital material environment and the types of relationships, technologies, and meanings that are generated. The media event concept also needs to be revised to accommodate an increasingly decentered media culture and power base, as well as the new socialities and ways of experiencing that are emerging with this. In this chapter, the authors outlined the history and development of the concept of media event and explored how the concept has been impacted on by the theoretical and technological changes since the 20th century. The others have argued that the notion of the media event still offers us a coherent and fascinating unit or category for ethnographic research and analysis in a digital context. However, as we have stressed, the infrastructural, social, technological, experiential, and affective elements of the media event shift into the new configurations. This necessitates a rethinking of how we might be both. I repeat, this necessitates a rethinking of how we might both conceptualize the media event as part of this digital materiality of the contemporary everyday, and how we might go about researching it through the very technologies by which it is made. Yes. So the the final chapter of this book is finished. So yes, in the digital ethnography course description, this is the first book we mentioned for our course. So we have finished the first book. And the second book, before we start the second book, Professor Bart Dean, Professor Bartholomew Crispin Dean, sir, will summarize in this on the Saturday session. He will summarize the principles of ethnography and the concepts, and which are helpful to practice the digital ethnography. So the entire book he will summarize and give us a nice presentation. So we look forward for that. So yeah. As I read these 7 chapters and 7 concepts, and also 5 principles which the others have suggested, principles of doing a digital ethnography, and the concepts, how to practice, concepts that are helpful in practicing digital ethnography. These things are really very rich in helping us understand what is out there in the digital field sites, what are the things that we need to look for, and what are the frameworks and concepts and theorizations are already there on the ground of the scholarly works of different others. So all these things, when we see and read and try to understand and try to come up with undertaking the digital ethnography and designing our research tools and research design and all these things. So these rich variety of concepts and principles gives us the experiential wisdom of these scholars and authorities in the field. Their experiences, their insights will really, in fact, help us to pursue the digital ethnography that we try to do. So, yes. Dear participants, is there any question? So I hope you are following these video recordings, and some of our participants are not able to participate live session, but I believe they will watch these video recordings uploaded in our AAH in the YouTube channel, so that they will really grasp what exactly we are trying to um, um, understand about the new ethnographic methods in the context of digital media and internet mediated spaces. So yes, um, there is a long way to go, and there are 44 chapters in the book. So in each session, we will try to cover 5 chapters, and only brief synopsis we will try to present, so that what are their problem, and what are their methods, and what are their findings done, each case study, so each chapter. So in a very we have a very less time to go, so we want to really help our participants to undertake this digital ethnographic endeavor very confidently. So that is why that's why we are trying to bring to your notice and about the existing authorities in the field of digital ethnography, so that if you are exposed to these authentic sources and texts which are mentioned, prescribed for our course on digital ethnography, so then you will be really, if you brush up these wonderful and very illuminating concepts and theorizations, so that will be helpful for our participants, so that they will have a responsible and productive digital ethnographic endeavors. Yeah, thank you for watching. So see you in the next session.
Sir.
So till then, take care.
Sir, good
Thank you,
afternoon,
sir. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for participating, and it's encouraging. Yeah.
One thing I want to tell you, sir. Today
Yes.
a departmental meeting was going on. That's why I can't attend the session in time. Sorry for that, sir. So you have thought about the three reflecting methods about this. What can you repeat the 3 reflecting methods? You have mentioned about the conventional digital ethnography, and it has 3 reflecting methods like that, no, sir?
The conventional ethnographic methods, in the sense in person, face to face, and this online, these both should be mixed if there is a viable circumstances, so that we can have in-depth understanding of the situation. That's the other suggestions. Others suggest the online and offline, where they can have rich insights if combined, kind of things. So,
okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Welcome. Excellent. That's a good question. Yeah. Okay, then. Take care. Bye.
Bye, sir.